I'm running a couple of minutes late tonight because I actually had to have some of the lights readjusted in the studio. They've been set for a guest to be interviewed. So I normally sit here and the guest normally sits here. And the lighting was designed specifically for those angles. And they were off. Welcome to Leading Leaders Podcast. 5-minute videos, 5 days a week. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. It's hard sometimes to imagine just how much impact the placement of the light is. We've seen just in the last few weeks various examples. In fact, I saw a social media post just yesterday of several different camera perspectives of media. For an example, there was the guy standing in the full hazmat suit, head to toe, doing an interview and had the mic really close, talking through his mask, covered head to toe, face covered, the whole thing. And yet someone took a picture from behind the scene and the camera guy's basically just standing there with street clothes running the camera. The perception that creates is changed by the light. It's changed by the angle of the camera. If you've ever put a flashlight under your chin and shined it up, or put one right above your head and shined it down, it changes the way you perceive things. A light at the wrong angle, a light at the wrong color, a light too close, and suddenly you look like a monster. There's an old phrase you've probably heard used before, usually in relationships, sometimes by a boss, but always by a camera person or a photographer. Make sure you have them in the right light. Maybe that's the sunset. Maybe it's a gray overcast where you don't have a lot of shadows. Maybe it's just putting the light at the right angle so you don't show the double, triple chin. You know, the pose where the neck is out and it's stretched so you don't have a turkey neck, right? All of these things are about perspective. But perspective changes. Sometimes it changes when suddenly a light hits something that, well, you didn't know was there before. Those things that have been intentionally hidden by the shadows or the angles of the light. See, if I move just a couple of inches one way or the other, I can change a little bit of the shading and shadows on my head based on where the lights are from. If I were to walk around the table, I'm out of the shot and now I'm back in the shot and suddenly I'm so close the light is blinding you with the reflection off of my white face. But it's still me, it's still the same, right? Perspective. Perspective changes. And when perspective changes, it can change everything. It can change the way you accept someone or reject someone. It can change the way you view a moment in time as it's happening to you or a past. Perspective is absolutely crucial. And according to Dr. Caroline Leaf, one of the most powerful things the human has is what she calls the MPA, the multiple perspective advantage. The human being, unlike very few other animals, has to be consciously aware of its own perspective. To intentionally, for the moment, zoom out and say, I'm going to stand outside of this moment for a moment, and I'm going to observe the scenario, the situation, the circumstances, the people, the tragedy, the trauma, from another angle. And I'm going to ask myself from over there, from looking at it from an entirely different angle, do I still tell the same story about that moment? I did an interview for a podcast the other day, and one of the questions he asked me was, do we all have the same relationship to stories? And I said, well, just remember that if a car accident happens at a corner and there are 5 live witnesses, those eyewitnesses will tell 9 different stories. Because some of them, because of the filter in their own mind, they're going to tell the story from what they saw, and others are going to tell the story from what they saw and what they believe happened, and what they saw and what they believe happened, and then they're also going to try to include the perspective of the person driving the car who made the decision because they feel for the victim. Or they feel like somebody didn't get justice just because of what happened. And all of those preconceived notions, they become part of the perspective. And they change the story. And they change the story that you tell, and they change the story that you hear. And sometimes it's just an angle. Sometimes it's just the way we face the camera. Sometimes it's Well, it's just the way we choose to look at what's going on around us. I want to challenge you as leaders. It's not just the way you perceive a story or an event or a relationship. Sometimes the most important part is the perception of others and the perspective that they bring into your moment, into your encounter, into your relationship. Could be enormous. And their past experiences will flavor their perspective and their perception of you. Guard that as you lead. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day. Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.